This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Joining us today is Kieran Mazaria, the CEO of Cadence Minerals, following news from their flagship Amapa iron ore project in Brazil. Well, thank you very much for joining us again, Kieran. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you, Mark, for taking the time to interview us. Yep, it's great.
It's good to be speaking to you. Some quite significant news this morning with plenty of detail in there on what's happening in the immediate term at Amapa. And the first thing I picked up on was the expected licensing timeline has been shortened to 12 to 16 months compared to, as you say in the RNS, a typical 36 months. So just first of all on that, is this for obtaining a license for the whole project to get it all built and eventually into production?
So in Brazil, there's two parts to licensing, and this is the first part. This is what we call the installation license. So this allows you to construct your project and what happens under certain parameters, right? So once that's approved, you construct the project, or in our case, rehabilitate the project. And then at the end of that construction process, you get an operational license, which as long as you've complied, it's a bit like a building inspection or building control. As long as you've complied with the regulations and the remit of your installation license, the operational license becomes forthcoming, and then you can operate, mine, process, transport, and ship the material.
So when you say you've got both licenses there, the installation license or the rehabilitation in your case, and then the operational license. Do you expect to get both of those? I mean, does the operational license come fairly quickly after you've done all the rehabilitation, so you can expect to have both these licenses within that 12 to 16 month timeline?
No, so you'd get the installation license first. Okay. You would then construct, and then as soon as you finish construction, you get your operational license.
Okay.
And that would be almost immediately. So it's a bit like getting your planning permission, constructing your house. At the end of your planning permission, you get building control to inspect it and say, yes, this house has complied with the planning permission. It is now a house and you can live in it effectively. So it's similar to that. So it's almost immediately after you've constructed the asset.
After you've constructed the asset. Okay. And the installation license, you expect to get that permission when?
So during the course of 2024. So we expect it will vary between the two areas, because one area we have to do a bit of a fuller environmental impact study, and the other we don't. So they will come in various parts in 2024. I'm going to make the assumption at this point in time it's going to be at the tail end of 2024, given that we've got 12 to 16 months.
Okay. So just thinking a high level kind of timeline in mind here, you've got Q2 to get that installation license, that permission to get on and build. Do you have any idea how long the building construction period will take to then lead you up to getting the operational license?
So build will take around 18 months, 12 to 18 months. That's what we expect it to be. And so once you have those installation licenses granted, you can then, subject to financing, of course, you can then start the construction of the project and the rehabilitation.
Okay, I see. So you're talking really sort of 2.5 years potentially there to get back into production, roughly speaking.
Roughly there or thereabouts. Yeah.
And you've been able to shorten this initial installation license process. You've cut it in half, which is obviously very nice. This is due to a lot of the work that's been done previously, because, of course, it wasn't a previously operational mine.
Yeah, so there's two parts to it. So we're not shortcutting this in any environmental sense. We're complying fully with all environmental legislation. It's just that in relation to the mine and the railway, what you have there is that the impact has already occurred. When this mine was operating, it had all its operational licenses. So the environmental impact has occurred. The closure plan was in place, and we've updated our closure plan as well. That's part of our PFS that was published earlier this year. And so what we're saying is effectively what we need to do and get is these PCA and RCA for those two areas. That's your environmental control plan. So that you're submitting to the government or the environmental authorities of the government how you're going to control the impact on the environment and the communities that it might impact, that it may or may not impact along the way. So that therefore doesn't require so much sort of background study. We are still having to do some field work. For example, new legislation has come into place for archaeology, and some more tightening legislations around dam control, or what they call tailing storage facility control, etc. So we have to do still a bit for background field work, but not as much. Typically, they might ask for 1.5 years to 2 years of background studies. But because those background studies already occur, the impact scope, we don't have to do as much of those. So therefore, our licenses for those two areas are shortened. On the port, we have to do a full environmental impact study because if you remember, there was a port collapse in 2014. And so we're changing the way that we load the material. So we have a jack-up rig instead of a direct load. So they've asked us to do a longer environmental study. But as we'd already started that environmental study in last year, we've already got a lot of the data. So we can utilize that data for this study. So we will start the next stage of the studies very quickly. But all of this falls in to getting all of our licenses in terms of the installation license in 2024, rather than typically having to wait till 2026 for that sort of license grant.
Okay, so you'll be doing lots of field work. You've got a bit to do on the railway and the mine itself, but the bulk of the work is going to be focused on the port and the new EIA effectively, and of course the tailings, which we'll discuss in a moment. But that's where the bulk of your work is going to be focused. Yeah,
absolutely, that's correct.
And you won't be able to start this work. Actually, no, you'll be able to start this work immediately, won't you? I guess.
Yeah, we're starting at the beginning of a season, which is in the next month.
Okay, and that will.
So you have to start during a seasonality, right?
Okay, yeah, of course. So you'll be starting that work fairly soon, and that will take you through to early Q2 and the granting, all being well, of that installation permit. Now, the last permit that the company had, I believe you were able to ship, was it approximately 6 million tons per month? Is that still the same thing? Are you still going for the same number?
So 6 million tons per year was...
Sorry.
If we could do 6 million tons per month, it would be even better. But 6 million tons per year is what it was licensed for. And we're effectively going for 5.8 million tons or 6 million tons a year of wet tons per year. Because you've got to remember that actually historically, even though the mine might have only produced, say, was doing 5.8 or up to 6 billion tons a year of material, it was also, because it has the infrastructure of the railway and the port, it was also exporting material from other mines and charging commercial rates to utilize the port and the railway. And people sometimes forget about this. The actual long-term benefit of this project as a whole is, even after the mine has ceased and we've closed it up and rehabilitated, you have a port and a railway that accesses a huge amount of commodities, whether it be soya, wood, or other minerals, to be shipped onto our port. So there is actually that, which is not even built into our economic model, but that is an extra strategic advantage of this asset.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, just thinking on, and of course you've got the tailing storage facility as well, haven't you, where a fair bit of work's got to be undertaken there. This is to test the structural integrity of the facility, and also you're doing a dam break test, which is very important to make sure, because the tailings are holding back quite a body of tailings, which is effectively slurry, it's very wet, it's watery. If that breaks, that can be pretty disastrous. So how are you feeling about that at the moment, the structural integrity, and what tests do you have to do to satisfy the government that it's safe?
Well, one of my first preoccupations, because when we started looking at investing in this, there was the Bermondino disaster, which was a failure of tailings facility and the absolute failure in how they manage those tailings storage facilities. So one of my primary concerns when we got involved was to inspect those. And initially we got an international consultancy to review those twice, in fact, so that we were satisfied that they were in a strong and stable position. And in fact, these tailings dams have been designed by Anglo. They were of a good design. They were all downstream design, and they have, they appeared stable. There was nothing wrong with them. So we were confident on that basis to start our investment. What has happened since then is that we've been maintaining these tailings. Since 2019, these tailings dams have been maintained. We've been complying with all the regulatory requirements of the rules in Brazil. And as a result of that, we have brought, and that's including, we've done drilling to look at the porosity, to look at how the water flows in these tailings dams. So we've done a really full study so far of it, and have, as a result, because we've been doing this maintenance, this reporting, this drilling and compliance, we've been able to upgrade the safety factor. So when we started, this was one of the highest risk dams, not because it was unstable, just because no one was reporting anything on it. So the default setting for the government is, sorry, it's unstable, that we have to assume the highest risk. So what we've done now is, through that reporting, through that maintenance, through the improvements, and we have made some improvements to the dam along the way since 2019, we've gone into one of the lowest categories as far as the government is concerned, and as far as we're concerned as well. Now, to take it to just below the highest category, it's almost impossible to get the highest category, because you would not have to essentially have to be a dry stacked tailings dam, which this is not. We are doing two things. One is a dam break study, which is effectively you simulate in a computer how, if there was a break in the dam or the dams, where would it impact? How would it impact? So does it go, and luckily what we're seeing, it doesn't reach any settlements or anything like that. It would impact the environment. And how do you mitigate the dam to prevent that and mitigate any impacts? And there will be a design around that as well. And the other thing is installing video monitoring, which is now a requirement in Brazil, live video monitoring across all the dams 24/7. And that will take us to a stage where the dam is as high as it is in terms of its risk, so it's its lowest risk. And that will then allow us, once we get our installation license, we'll be able to permit those dams as fully operational for the life of mine.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was a very detailed explanation there. Good to hear. So just thinking on news flow, of course, we're talking 2.5 to perhaps 3 years to get back into production. But of course, doesn't mean that nothing's going to be happening during that time. Can the market expect to be seeing news from these elements, the tailing storage facility, the mine fieldwork, the rail fieldwork, and of course, the port fieldwork, as we basically go into early next year?
Yeah, so there's news flow to come from stuff that we've announced beforehand. As part of our PFS completion, we had 3 key areas to focus on, and that was the one was to improve the capital expenditure on the port, which we did, and we reduced by, I think, 28 million, and we've announced that. 2 was the possible increase in our mineral resources, because at the moment we have enough for a 16-year mine life, but it would be really lovely if we could increase that substantially. So there's the Tucano mine in the north, which has around 135 million tons of ore historically. They are going through a JRP, so that might take a bit longer. So if we can increase that, we can increase the mine life, increase the NPV. And the lastly was looking at our flow sheet. This is the way that we take the iron ore and then process it and produce an iron ore product. So we produce a 65% material. How can we improve that cost? If we can improve that by $1 or $2, suddenly we $1 or $2 represents a 12 million difference to EBITDA every year. So $1 or $2 makes a big difference for us. So what we need to be doing is looking how we can improve that. Now, we're in the process of putting out a scope of works to get an engineering firm to review that, and that maybe both reduce the capital costs and reduce the operational costs for our process flow sheet. If we're able to achieve that, we become very competitive. We've reduced our capex, reduced our operational costs, and increased our mine life, all of which would go into a DFS for project funding. And that would be an improvement to the asset and improvement value to our shareholders. So those 2 of those things, or at least one of those things, we look to sort of announce. We've commissioned the work, the results of that work. So that will be one side, which is the engineering side. And of course, any results from in terms of the installation licenses will also be news flow over, I would say, the next 6 months. and how that's progressing once it's been submitted, etc. And also, lastly, I would say that, one of the things that we've realized is that what we want to do is bring in a JV partner to take us through the next stage, to take us through DFS, definitive feasibility study. And hopefully, if that's successful, we'll be able to announce that. And then that takes us well on the plan that we can embark on the DFS after the improvement studies are being completed and almost hit the DFS and also have our licensing granted, which would be a really nice place to be, which means that, then construction is only subject to financing.
Sure. Okay. So really you're talking maybe just in 6 months or just over 6 months, maybe to be in hopefully quite a good position there with the the IL, the installation license granted and able to start construction and also work on the DFS being able to get underway there.
Yeah, we would have submitted the study within 6 months, but the actual installation license will be granted in that 12 to 16 month period. Remember that we say in the announcement. So the idea is by the time that if all goes well between 12 to 16 months, we could be in a situation where licenses are granted, DFS is completed, and we go with financing for construction.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. So there's lots going on. I want to just draw investors' attention to a couple of things that were announced as well. You've got a presentation this Wednesday, the 13th, haven't you, in London, Shares Magazine?
Yeah, indeed. So any shareholders would want to come along, please do. It will be a chance for shareholders to put any questions they have to me in relation to the asset, the Amapa asset, or any of our other assets that we have invested in. And I think that's a great place to meet. So if people want to do that. Also, I believe Shares Magazine will do a recording of it and put that out as well.
Okay, that's good. And the other thing that was mentioned, your PFS, your pre-feasibility study that's already been completed, you've recently released sort of a summary of it, haven't you, with some more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So we published this a very short summary of the PFS in January this year. And what we thought would be really nice is for both shareholders and any new potential investors to actually see a bit more detail, because I think we couldn't, publishing the whole PFS is a 500-page document, and I think that's a bit torturous for anyone. So a 50-page summary or a 40-page summary is a good place where people can start and understand the amount of work that's gone into it. So it doesn't put anything that's new or price sensitive into the market, but what it does, it shows how we've developed this, the important factors in terms of some sensitivity on economics, the breakup of capital costs in a better way, and things like how we're going to embark on things like community engagement, environmental processing, human resources. So a PFS covers everything, not only just the economics, and this is a summary of that PFS. Just go online. The link is on the announcement, and download it and read it at your leisure.
Read it at your leisure, yes. I will try to make the most of that and read that as well, Kieran. But thank you very much for now, Kieran Mazzeri, the CEO of Cadence Minerals.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.